at 9:45 on July the 7th, a very staged theatrical event took place. A number 30 bus took a detour. It never normally goes here at all in Upper Woburn Place, and it stopped right in front of the British Medical Association. And there, the bus driver got out and asked somebody the way. Okay? After he did that, he looked round and the top of his bus neatly lifted off. The whole top of the bus neatly came off, and we then see pictures of a lot of rather nonchalant looking people or actors, whatever, standing on the top of the bus, and that was it. And after that, the media could start talking about the bombs of July the 7th. That was an image of a bomb going off. And before that, on the tube, we had power surge stories, power surges. After this, it could be the bombs went off on the morning of July the 7th.
What I think is really interesting is obviously with 9/11, they filmed the whole thing of the towers coming down, and that was later sort of forensically examined by people to conclude that the towers were brought down by a controlled demolition. So with 7/7, what they wanted to do was keep it underground largely, so there could be none of those photographs for people to examine. But they still need some kind of visual representation of what's happened. That's the point. That's why they had to have the one bus bomb. So they've got something to photograph to show you, hey, look, a bomb's gone off, basically. But none of what they photograph makes any sense. And indeed, we should have a CCTV shot of the moment the bus goes off from one of the traffic cameras.
Yeah.
We came here and checked it shortly after the event. There's definitely a traffic camera that would have been pointing there that would have got that, basically.
And the photograph they did eventually show was of the bus in front. And they released pictures of the bus in front of the 30 and a whole lot of concerned passengers of the bus in front, but not the actual bus. When I checked through all of the camera footage of this day, I found 2 or possibly 3 dead bodies in all of the pictures, and I think there's a lot of discordant testimony here. We've got about 6 or 7 women on the lower deck who have testified and seem genuine witnesses, and we've got a few on the upper deck. People obviously experience trauma, and it's rather strange. Whatever it is that happened, something went bang. Yeah, and exactly what we're not sure. And it's as if a whole lot of people in the BMA building, nurses, suddenly rush out and start looking after everybody. They were almost ready for such an event, and I think by noon the bodies were carried away off to the mortuary.
Yeah, no, I think wasn't there some confusion in this square as well about this kind of training exercise? Wasn't the guy filmed here who had all the bandages around his head? Have you seen that footage?
Yeah.
It almost looks comical, basically. And then they're told by I think it's the police, to go back to the hotel or something.
Yeah.
And again, this is part of what we allege is kind of like the confusion scenario. By running an exercise that day, half the people are thinking this is just an exercise but playing it for real.
Yeah, and also there's a witness, quite a good witness in the top deck called Tanya, is with her boyfriend, so the two, as it were, held their testimony together, and she saw the police putting up yellow tape around this area shortly before the bomb went off. That was her last memory before the explosion. So the police were here right away, and there were 3 British Transport police driving behind that 30 bus that blew up. So they were the first people on the scene, British Transport police.
That's interesting as well. So you think they would be in a position to report what actually happened then?
Yeah.
In terms of explosions and so on. I mean, again, the fact that they haven't given statements, or those statements aren't available, is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the most permanent image, what's there all the time, before, during and after the explosion, of course, is the King Star van. Right, a white van right in front of the 30 bus, with a prominent thing, we specialise in controlled demolition. And that's a very iconic image. Obviously, when interviewed by the BBC, they said, oh no, we couldn't possibly do that, we don't do that sort of thing. But it's one of the things you can't help noticing.
Yeah, and I think it pretty much checked out on the web that they did controlled demolition, wasn't it? It wasn't just normal controlled demolition, it was kind of specialised in unusual controlled demolition, so the very kind of thing you would need, the techniques you need to know to, say, blow the lid off the roof of a bus without actually doing any more harm, basically.
Yeah.
And again, I say, you know, if you're close to the scene of a terrorist incident, you're treated in normal circumstances by police as a suspect. So that van and the driver right next to the bus should have been a prime suspect, should have been interviewed under anti-terrorist legislation. But as far as we can see, that none of that's happened.
Yeah. There was a lady, two ladies in the back on the top deck, sitting quite at the back or right near the back, and they had their teeth shattered and they suffered quite a bit of psychological trauma, and they have since met together to help them to cope with the awful trauma and shock. But the fact is, that is where Hasib Hussein was supposed to be sitting, at the back of the top deck, and they did not get blown to bits. Let's emphasise that there is no credible witness whatsoever who saw anyone like Hasib Hussein getting onto this bus at Euston.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the same for the tube journeys as well, isn't it? There's nobody who, I think, ever stands there and sees an Asian man with a rucksack who survives the event. Nobody. I mean, Bruce Late says there was no one there. He was definitely in one of the carriages, and so on. You know, yeah. They don't. These people just don't seem to appear. So none of the witness statements seem to tie in with the official story we're told.
Yeah. Well, here we've got the fake witness called Richard Jones, who works for some schools with the explosive factory, and he turns up and he claims to be on the lower deck. And he claims to have seen Hasib Hussein fiddling about in his rucksack, and a whole lot of stories he gave out, all of them discordant and totally incompatible with the pictures we saw of Hasib Hussein on the driving down to Luton, and he was the one reported in all the media, and the various characteristics of his report show that it's impossible, and in fact it's quite unlikely he was on the bus. Yeah,
no, this is one of the hallmarks we've noticed of false flag terrorism, is that in fact they will have people on scene to provide immediate false witness reports. There's some famous footage of a guy on 9/11, literally minutes after the towers have just collapsed, saying the towers came down, it was fire weakening the steel. Now who is going to say that, who's standing next to a tower that's just collapsed on that day, basically? Oh yes, on the idea that Jean-Charles de Menezes leapt the barriers on the 27th of July 2005 as well. That witness he was named at the time, but has now completely disappeared, can't be traced anywhere. Yeah. So it does appear that to get their story into the media immediately, they use false witnesses.
Yeah. Tell me, Dave, we're at a very iconic site here. There's the statue of Gandhi here and the Hiroshima tree. There's Zurich Peace Resonance, Tavistock Square here, and there's the Tavistock Institute used to be here. All sorts of fables about where mind control technology developed. Developed out of study of war stress, war trauma. Do you think there's any truth in this story of mind control technology in the old Tavistock Clinic when it was here?
I think there are types of mind control. What people have got to realise though is it doesn't work on the vast majority of human beings. What you've got to be able to do is reduce someone's resonance or self-worth over a period of years. And I don't think there's any coincidence that the kind of people who are involved in things like presidential assassinations or the guy Chapman who carried out the attack on Lennon, these are people who've had history of psychological problems. They use those psychological drugs to lower their resonance. Yeah. And one of the classic techniques used by any intelligence service is to reduce somebody so they're desperate, and then send in the nice guy. Yeah. And then you send the nice guy, and the nice guy says, look, I'll be your friend, I'll give you the cigarettes, I'll get you out of this situation as long as you do this for me. Yeah. Now with people in very low resonance that can work, basically.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to mind control. I'm not sure that it's technical in the way they say it is. I think it's just to do with normal human psychology.
Right, but that didn't really apply to any of these four lads from Leeds and Aylesbury, did it? I mean, none of their friends saw them in any... I mean, suffering any peculiar stress, or none of them had fanatic religious beliefs, did they?
No,
they're all lads keen on cricket and buying new trainers and getting through their exam passes and maybe looking after their new young kids. That's what they were into, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, the classic facet to look out for is usually the loner, someone who doesn't have a support network to help them. Can be very prey to those kind of mind control techniques because they're isolated and by themselves. And these guys seem to be very sociable. As you say, they were playing cricket with people, they were not withdrawn characters, basically. Yeah.
Tell me, do you think Hasib Hussein was anywhere around here that morning? Do you think he was in London? I mean, in the so-called July 7th trial of 2008, they released pictures at King's Cross with umbrellas and supposedly Hasib Hussein stopping with a bag here. Do you think is that valid at all, or can we answer?
The picture we've seen outside Boots again looks like a fake. There's no date timeline on it. He looks like he's floating, basically.
He does, yeah.
And again, that should be supported by witness statements of people who were there at the time, you know. And people, I think, would remember a guy with a massive, great rucksack on. That's the point. Who was Asian, basically.